John the Baptist. We first met John in last week's gospel reading while he was standing at the river Jordan. And then John told everyone within hearing, he told them to prepare themselves for the coming of the Messiah. The Messiah, the one who is set apart by God and who has special powers. And had we continued reading on to the next verse, verse 13, we would have heard John acknowledge Jesus as the Messiah he was longing for and waiting for. But in today's reading, we find John sitting in prison, not for what he did, but what he said to Herod. Now, Herod had married his half-brother's wife, while the half-brother was still alive and still married to the woman. And when John accused Herod of breaking Jewish law with that marriage, Herod retaliated by tossing him in jail. So today we hear, as John is waiting in despair in a dark prison, we hear him ask through his disciples, "Are you the one, Jesus, or should we expect another?" Now at first, that question might sound like John, a faithful Jew, is questioning not only his prophecy about Jesus as Messiah, but also questioning Jesus himself. But then again, maybe the question comes not so much about John's doubting who the Messiah is, but because of John's expectations for the Messiah. As Father Tom reminded us last week, the Jews were expecting a Messiah, one like King David, an earthly king who used the power of destruction and war to fight against the power of the ruling empire. And he brought peace to Israel for a while. And John's question today is important, not just for John as he sits waiting in Herod's prison, but also for us today as we wait and to prepare ourselves for the Christ whose birthday we will celebrate in just a few days. And the answer that Jesus gives is important, not just because it tells us who Jesus is, but because it tells us what he expects us, his followers, to do. And this is what Jesus answered. He said, look and see what I do. I treat the deaf, the blind, the lame, the outcasts, the prisoners. I treat them with compassion, love, and respect. And Jesus does use his power, but not for violence, war, or hate. Jesus uses his power to bring the good news of God's love, grace, and mercy to all in John's time and in our time. John is telling us, his followers, to offer peace and to love our neighbors as ourselves. And we do that. We do that by making sure our voices and actions do not demonize or dehumanize anyone. And we do that by making sure we never use the actions or the words of fear, hate, or violence toward anyone. That's easy for me to say, but sometimes it's hard to do. So, like many of you, as we wait during this Advent season, I too have been taking stock of my life and my actions, what I do. And to help me with that, I've been reading a devotional that focuses on how we can keep watch for God's presence in our life. And one of the devotions, a devotion written by Tony D. Vick, really spoke to me as I was preparing this sermon. Like John the Baptist, Tony is in jail. He entered prison in 1996 after living 34 years as a free man. and he is currently serving 2 life sentences, not for what he said, but for murder. And Tony writes that Christmas is a particularly hard time for many of the incarcerated folks, because it's a depressing time and a lonely time when the suicide rate goes up drastically. But Tony says he's one of the fortunate, because in each of the 7 prisons he's lived in, God has revealed rays of hope and light and love. Rays of hope and love provided by the hands and hearts of people much like you and me. Rays of hope that could be so small as a new flavor of ramen in the prison commissary, or as large as the diligent work of prison reform advocates and activists inside and outside the prison wire. Rather than dehumanizing the convicts, the prison reform advocates work to provide education, job training, rehabilitative programs, religious services, and mentors. And rays of hope are penetrating the razor wire and the thick walls of the prison. They're penetrating because, says another prisoner, when you're in the darkness and a little light comes to you, you follow it. And rays of hope and love are lighting Tony's ways. At his current prison, he is actively following the light of the Holy Spirit as she leads him to the power of peace, rather than violence, fear, or hate. And how is Tony doing that? Well, Tony is active in building and strengthening a community of fellow inmates. These inmates also want to live in peace, to live together in peace without fear of gang violence or being stabbed on the way to the shower. And this community works together by encouraging each other, teaching each other, loving each other, all to the purpose of living with each other in harmony and peace. And with courage in the darkness of their prison. They are and see rays of hope and love. And may we also, as we wait, have the courage, humility, patience, and perseverance to be rays of light in the darkness of our world as we follow the lead of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.